Hello everyone, Ember here, and welcome back to a new video. In this one, I'd like to take a look at some fun custom cards that I've designed for the Pokemon TCG. So with the reveal of Lush Forest for Mega Evolution, I just thought it'd be fun to take a look at some other stadiums and maybe see what could be made in terms of like fun card design, not necessarily making them broken to the point where they're like bannable basically, but broken to the point where they could be really fun and interactive for the game. So, first up, I have Sinnoh Castle. Now, this has the unique effect of whenever a player uses an attack that costs 3 or more energy, then that player must choose one. Discard a card from the top of your deck, or discard an energy from that Pokemon that would attack. So, it'd have to specify the Pokemon that just attacked. But yeah, definitely more of a control focused stadium, and I can see a lot of control players out there would really like to have something like this in the game. Of course, it only does affect attacks that cost 3 or more energy, so there is some limitations to it. And currently in the Pokemon TCG, most attackers only attack for 1 or 2 energy, like 2 energy seems to be the most popular attack cost in the game right now. So 3 or more energy is a pretty big restriction, and at the very least, your opponent gets to choose which one they do. They might not want to discard the top card of their deck, they might not want to lose energy, so they do get a bit of choice in it, but I think it would be quite a fun stadium for control players, and I'd like to see what kind of crazy plays control players could come up with using this kind of stadium. So that's why I made it. Next up is we have Pokemon Tower, a very spooky location. So this one has the effect in between turns, put 2 damage counters on each Pokemon in play with a Roblox, and you get to ignore this effect on Pokemon in play that have the Self Scope tool card attached to them. So basically, this is just a reference to the fact that in case you never play the games, Pokemon Tower is an area where Pokemon would go to rest, literally, not metaphorically, would go to rest. But yeah, the tower itself is haunted by Gengar and like Haunter and things. But the thing is, you can only enter it with a Self Scope, as far as I'm aware. So like Self Scope would kind of be a fun workaround for this stadium. Is it too powerful? Like, does it render the stadium useless? Does it mean that everyone has to now play this tool card? I'm not sure. I think it would have to depend on what the tool card does, and I never went to the trouble of designing one. But it is kind of just some flavorsome I thought I would add, because I know that not every stadium is kind of like just like their like real life counterpart, I should say, to like the anime or the video game series. They're more just like self-contained in the TCG, but I think it'd be fun if they had a bit more interactions with their current locations. So yeah, that's kind of why I designed it. And also just to give it a bit more of a nerf, I guess, because 2 damage counters in between turns can stack up very quickly, as we've seen with like Frostlass and Monkey Dory. So yeah, 2 damage counters, pretty decent. It's also like a pseudo reprint of Shrine of Punishment, but I think Shrine of Punishment would be so much cooler if it was just all Roblox Pokemon, and not just like Pokemon V, Pokemon EX. If it was everything, then it could be used and expanded for a very long time. So yeah, I definitely like Pokemon Tower. I think it could be a really fun one, but again, I think it would also have to depend on what Self Scope did. So probably something to do with Psychic types and Dark types. I'd have to imagine. Next up, those we've got Plasma's Frigate. Now, I really like Team Plasma, and I really like Plasma's Frigate as well. Plasma's Frigate is already a stadium. It's just called Plasma Frigate, so I had to rename this one slightly, but I still wanted to feature it. It's basically just a flying airship. Like, it's just really cool. But yeah, each Pokemon in play can have up to 2 tool cards attached to them. And if that Pokemon is a Team Plasma Pokemon, it can have up to 4 tool cards attached to it instead, which is kind of crazy. So this would have to be designed around tool cards that are either quite passive or don't really give direct buffs to anything that's not a Team Plasma Pokemon, which, well, in the TCG right now, there's plenty of great tool cards, right? There's Air Balloon, there's, what's a great tool card? Defiance Band, that's another really good one. There's, like, Maximum Belt, so you could, like, stack a Maximum Belt and a Defiance Band on a Pokemon, which is really fun. And there's that Amulet Ace Spec that sees, like, no play, but, it's a fun option. I think it'd be really cool if it was a universal effect. Like, we've seen this before on Ancient Traits in the XY era, where some Pokemon had this trait where you could have up to 2 tool cards attached to them. And we've seen abilities on, like, I think it was Sigilif that said it could have up to 4 tool cards attached to it. So, like, I think it'd be really fun if there was a way to, like, just give loads of tool cards to Pokemon. And, like, this could get kind of broken, right? Like, you could just put 2 bands of some description on a Pokemon, all of a sudden it's doing plus 60 damage. Like, can you imagine Ethan's Typhlosion with 2 silver bangles attached to it? Like, things like that. Like, maybe it's not super practical in practice, but, even something like Fan Rotom, right? You give it a silver bangle and then another silver bangle, so it can do 130 base. That's not bad, actually, with a Plasma Frigate in play. So yeah, Team Plasma Pokemon would also depend on what they do, and I have given this the Team Plasma badge, even though it's just from the word text as a subtext as opposed to like the actual badge. But yeah, this would be like a return to the Team Plasma mechanic as well. But yeah, I thought this was interesting. I don't know. I like ancient traits. I like tool cards. I thought this would be quite a fun one to do. Next up is we have Ilex Forest Shrine. So this is the one from Celebi. So at the end of each player's turn, that player may draw 2 cards, which is kind of crazy. The effect can only be used, however, if that player has 5 or fewer Pokemon in play. For some reason, when I was typing this out, I wrote 5 or more Pokemon in play, which, just wouldn't really make much sense unless it was to, like, really give a serious advantage to someone who set up, like, all 6 Pokemon on the board. But that just seemed like not good. Like, you shouldn't be helping people who are like already got everything they want on the board. Like, realistically, this could be nerfed even further to if this player has 4 or fewer Pokemon in play would actually be a bit better, because then it could only be used by decks that don't require tons of setup and tons of board support. And it's also like drawing new cards as well, so you shouldn't need to have tons of board support. But yeah, I do think this one is kind of broken. Like, I personally would not like to see a stadium like this, but I thought it'd be funny. And I was asking the question, would it be even crazier to make this draw 3? If it was just draw 1, would it even see any play? I think if this was draw 1, it would still see some play in some niche things. But draw 2 is already kind of crazy. Then draw 3 is just ridiculous. So, like, I wouldn't go any higher than draw 2 for sure. But yeah, still a very fun effect. But I do think this one is kind of broken, to be honest. So yeah, kind of broken for me personally. Then we have Abundant Shrine. This one says, in between turns, if any Pokemon were knocked out at the end of a last turn, then that player whose Pokemon was knocked out may attach a basic energy card from a discard pile to one of their bench Pokemon, but only if they have 3 or less energy in play. So kind of a lot going on here, so I'll just give an example in case that's like really hard to understand. Basically say your turn has just ended and your, I don't know, Trubbish has just been KO'd, right? Wait, that doesn't make any sense. Wait, no, I'll start again. So let's just say at the end of your turn, you've just knocked out one of your opponent's Pokemon, right? So, can I understand my own card? Wait, let me read this again. In between turns, if any Pokemon were knocked out at the end of the last turn, then that player whose Pokemon... Yeah, it does make sense. I'm just getting ahead of myself. Like, I'm just getting myself in my own mind, I should say. Like, it does make sense, right? So, this one would confuse players, I think. It confuses me, it confuses everyone, okay? Like, at the end of a player's turn, if they had a Pokemon that was knocked out, oh, I see where I'm going wrong. I'm in the mindset of it's the player's Pokemon and it's their turn as well. But that's obviously like your Pokemon will never get knocked out at the end of your turn unless it's some silly rule. Okay, so like I should probably do a recording take 2, but there's no way I'm doing that. So like yeah, at the end of your turn, say you've just knocked out one of your opponent's Pokemon, right? Then they get to attach the basic energy, but only if you have 3 less energy in play. Okay, so just ignore everything else I've said so far. It does make sense. It's pretty easy to understand. It's just getting your head around the wording, because I've worded it probably quite bad here as well. So yeah, at the end of your turn, say you've just taken a prize card, you've just knocked out one of your opponent's Pokemon, then that player, before their turn starts, would get to attach a basic energy to one of their bench Pokemon if they have 3 or less energy in play. So it wouldn't be like super helpful to decks that can charge up like 6 energy in play, like Baxcalibur or Charizard. But or like not Charizard really, but just any deck that wants loads and loads of energy, like Raging Bolt, for example, that would be another one that wants to have a ton of energy in play at all times. But small amounts of energy, like Dragapult, I guess, could benefit from this. Like smaller energy counts of decks would definitely like this. But yeah, I kind of got a bit of ahead of myself there because I got confused about the turn sequence. I think I had a similar issue as well when I was writing this out. But yeah, it's worded horribly. I do apologize. This card is also kind of broken. Like, again, I don't think I would rather see this in play. Like, this one was silly, but I think this one, yeah, this one would just confuse people, I think. Like, it's just a bit too confusing. But yeah, Abundant Shrine. It's a fun idea, I guess, for some energy acceleration from a stadium, but yeah, no, I don't think this is... It would have to be like if your opponent takes 2 prize cards or something at the very least, then you get to attach energy. Have another restriction on it maybe, but yeah, it's a fun idea though in concept, I think. Next up is we have Seafolk Village, and no, I don't think this card is broken. However, I do think it'd be really fun for healing decks, like grass decks, those grass decks you see on the ladder that want to heal damage. But yeah, whenever a Pokemon uses an attack that heals damage only from itself, then heal that much damage from each of that player's bench Pokemon. So for example, if your Venusaur said like heal 40 damage from this Pokemon, then you would heal 40 as well from each of your bench Pokemon. So kind of just a fun little thing. I'm also a bit salty that we didn't ever see like Seafolk Village in the Pokemon TCG. I think it kind of sucks. But yeah, that petty grab aside. Like, I do think this is a fun one. Like, yeah, healing is a bit weak in the game right now, and I think healing's only good if it's Monkey Dory, because Monkey Dory is also giving you another plus 30 damage, which is questionable for the game, really. But, like, if we ever get good healing attackers, basically, then this could be really fun. So it would have to be paired up with some really good Pokemon that heal themselves, like healing 60, 90, even 100 damage, But at the same time, though, I think this one could be fun. Next up, though, is I just want to take a look at 3 custom cards I made on the side. Not stadiums, of course, but just some other ones that I made. I went with Destiny Knot, so you can only play this card if your opponent has 4 or fewer prize cards remaining. Choose a support card from your discard pile, reveal it, and put it into your hand. I would like Veer Seeker to come back in some way, but I don't think Veer Seeker itself should come back. I think Veer Seeker itself was a bit too much. So having a sort of restriction on it really raises the question, how many copies of this would you want to run, if any? Because it's kind of like a dead card for a lot of the game. Do you play 2 copies of this? Do you play 3 copies? I think it would be an interesting argument. It's not just like Veer Seeker, which was like a 4 of in so many decks. So I think an alternate version of Veer Seeker that's slightly nerfed would be quite interesting to see. So yeah, I quite like Destiny Knot. Then we also have Cynthia's Strategy, which is yet again another confusing card, so I'll try and break this one down. Hopefully do a much better job. But yeah, if an attacker active Pokemon would use this turn does no base damage, then it instead deals 30 damage. This damage isn't affected by weakness, resistance, or any other effects on your opponent's active Pokemon. So effectively what this means is, say you have a Pokemon that has an attack, and that attack just says discard the top 2 cards of your opponent's deck, right? It doesn't deal any damage. That's what this is here for. This is to say that attack would then do 30 base damage. Now, is there a better way to word this? Probably. Would this make sense in a lot of situations? Because, spread attacks, for example, don't technically do base damage. They just do 60 damage to 2 of your opponent's bench Pokemon, for example. So I'm not sure how that would factor into this. I'm not sure if it would literally have to be that attack did no damage whatsoever, then it would deal 30 damage, or would spread attackers now get to do 30 damage to their active spot as well? That's something that would have to be discussed. Does damage count as spreading? Does that count as damage? No, not really, but would it count here? Things like that. So I think it's an interesting question to raise as well, how exactly would this thing even be worded? But yeah, I thought it'd be a fun idea just because we don't often see those styles of attacks being used, and often it's because they don't do any damage whatsoever. So I think it would be kind of fun to have a way of giving those an option to actually do proper damage. Now, it's still not affected by weakness or resistance, but it will go through any other effects. So that's kind of cool. But yeah, 30 damage, it's not a lot, but it's the same as Leon, for example, saying you do plus 30 damage this turn. So I thought Cynthia's Strategy was something fun. Then you've also got Choice Scarf over here. If this Pokemon this card is attached to moved from the bench to the active spot during this turn, then its attacks do 30 more damage to your opponent's active Pokemon. Just, a different take on the whole plus 30 damage to a certain Pokemon type. Be it EX, Vs, attached to non-Roblox, if you're behind on prizes, that kind of thing. So this could have been a belt, I guess, or a band. But I went with Choice Scarf because I don't think we had a Choice Scarf in the TCG, actually. But yeah, kind of a fun effect. It kind of promotes switching as well, running pivots and things, which I like. All things I think should be promoted more of in the game. It feels like the game's gone to the point where it's way too safe to just not really need to pivot almost. You can just kind of rely on chaining attacks very easily. What I mean is you don't really have any pressure on you to really care about your next turn. There's so many times I've seen, especially playing on the ladder, but also even a top level play, where you can very easily set up multiple things during your turn for next turn as well. So I think there's less pressure on having pivots and things. But I do think Choice Scarf is quite fun. This would also be really fun with that Stadium Plasma's Frigate, where you could have an air balloon attached to a Pokemon as well. So you could retreat it and then move into another Pokemon with Choice Scarf attached to it. Fun things like that. Honestly, I really like Plasma's Frigate. I really wish we would see a stadium like that. But yeah, Choice Scarf, quite a fun option, I think. But yeah, thanks for watching. Let me know what you think of these down below. Do you think any of them are broken? Do you think any of them would possibly get printed? And do you have a favorite one? And yeah, thank you for watching.